Are you familiar with the feeling that love must be constantly earned? Not received as a gift, but earned with the right actions, with never saying no, by being convenient for others? Are you just tired of this? This paralysis is not your fault and not a weakness of character. It's the work of a powerful yet invisible force in your psyche. And Carl Jung was the first to give this force a name and decode its laws, showing why it keeps you captive. Over the next hour, we won't just examine this problem, we will decode this hidden law. You will understand why you fell into this trap. You will discover what great task your soul is actually setting for you through this pain. And most importantly, you will see the path to becoming not good, but whole. If you're ready to stop earning love and reclaim it for yourself, our journey inward begins right now. Let's pause for a moment, take a breath, and talk about this for real. Let's talk about what it's like to live with your internal radar always on. A hypersensitive locator that scans the space around you, 247 for other people's expectations, moods, and unspoken needs. The slightest change in tone of voice, a barely noticeable shadow on someone's face, your radar picks up everything and immediately sends an alarm to your brain. Something's wrong. It needs fixing. You need to try harder. It's a quiet, constant hum of anxiety beneath the surface of every choice you make. Which shirt to wear so as not to unsettle anyone? What words to use in an email so you don't seem harsh? Should you agree to a request that will drain your last strength just to avoid awkward tension? You are an emotional straight-A student who has been taking a test for top marks all your life, yet still doesn't know which subject it is and who will grade it. You are an architect of other people's happiness. You build magnificent palaces of comfort, support, and readiness to help for your loved ones, while you yourself live in the unfinished, cold house of your own soul. You are a perpetual debtor in the bank of others' expectations, where each act of kindness is not a gift, but another payment on a loan that cannot be repaid. And here is the main, most brutal paradox of this state. The more you do for others, the more flawless your role, the more invisible and lonely you feel. An invisible glass wall rises between you and the world. Applause sounds, but it's behind the glass, and you are left alone with the silence. And while you're listening to this, one part of you may be nodding in agreement, but there is another part that whispers the familiar, poisonous words of shame. Something is wrong with me. I'm the only one. It is to this second part that I want to speak now, and I want it to hear me very clearly. You are not alone. This condition is not a sign of your wrongness or some internal defect. On the contrary, it is the direct, albeit tragic result of your deep sensitivity and a vast but misdirected desire to love and be loved. It is not an illness, but distorted health. Believe me, at this very second, millions of the kindest, most responsible, and most talented people on the planet are in the same invisible cage. These are the best employees who never say no. These are the most loyal friends who are always ready to help, forgetting about themselves. These are the most caring parents who give all of themselves without remainder. They, like you, carry this invisible burden. So allow me for a moment to be the voice you may have been missing. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are someone who has tried for far too long to keep others warm while freezing yourself. Your immense energy of love has simply been flowing in the wrong direction, nourishing others while leaving you in a drought. Precisely because this is not a weakness, but a distorted strength, we can afford to ask one very bold, almost heretical question. What if I told you that this exhausting need to be good, this perpetual drive to earn approval, is not your greatest flaw, but your greatest yet tragically distorted strength? What if this inner hunger is not a curse but a call? What if all this pain is not a bug in your system, but its most important function, desperately trying to get your attention? Like a warning light on your dashboard, it is not the problem itself. It only points to the fact that the true engine of your life is not working as it should. It's a call from the deepest layers of your psyche, a call to come home, a call to the most important and most difficult journey of your life, the journey to your wholeness, to the true I that was buried under the rubble of others' expectations and your own fear of being rejected. And then the main question changes. It no longer sounds like, how do I get rid of this pain? But what is this pain trying to tell me? The answer lies deep, and to understand how this strength became distorted and how to return it to its true, pristine form, we cannot jump straight to solutions. That would be like building a new house on a rotten foundation. So before we talk about the how, we must ruthlessly, but with the greatest compassion, dissect the why. We must see exactly which bars make up the invisible cage you live in. We must understand its structure, its logic, its merciless mechanics. This will require the courage to call things by their names and to discard the familiar but superficial diagnoses that have only led you astray until now. We must see this trap in all its engineering precision to understand how to deactivate it. So our empathic immersion is complete. The surgical work begins. We proceed to deconstruct the problem. And the first incision we must make in this surgical work is to separate what this problem seems to be from what it actually is. You have likely tried for years to name your condition. You read articles, watched videos, tried on dozens of labels. Perhaps you decided you just have low self-esteem or toxic perfectionism, or you found yourself in the description of codependency. Maybe you even called it the straight A syndrome or the good girl boy syndrome with bitter irony. You sorted through these diagnoses like keys to a lock, but none of them opened the door to true freedom. And let's be perfectly honest, these words are not lies. You really do suffer from insecurity. You really do exhaust yourself with perfectionism. The patterns of your behavior really can look like codependency. But here is the fundamental misconception that kept you stuck. All of this is only symptoms. Imagine you go to a doctor with a severe viral illness. You have 3 obvious symptoms: high fever, a debilitating cough, and profound weakness. Now imagine the doctor looks at you and gives you 3 separate diagnoses: high fever disease, cough syndrome, and weakness disorder. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? You intuitively understand that all 3 symptoms are manifestations of a single cause, a virus acting deep within your body. It's the same here. Low self-esteem is your psychological fever. Perfectionism is your racking cough. Codependency is your soul's weakness. You tried to treat a deep infection of the soul with Band-Aids made a popular diagnosis. That's why all your attempts to just boost your self-esteem or stop being a perfectionist failed. You were bringing the fever down, but the virus kept living and causing it again and again. So what is this virus? What is its true name, hidden behind many symptoms? Let's give it a precise clinical name: chronic emotional hunger. This is not a metaphor. It's a description of a fundamental state of your psyche. At the very core of your soul yawns a void that longs to be filled. It's not hunger for food, money, or status. It's a primordial, infantile hunger for the feeling of unconditional acceptance. Hunger for that gaze that says, you are valuable not for what you do, but simply because you exist. Hunger for warmth that doesn't need to be earned. And your whole life, all your behavioral strategies that you mistakenly took for personality traits are in fact just desperate, distorted ways to satisfy this hunger. Your perfectionism, it's not a striving for excellence. It's an attempt to prepare such a perfect, flawless dish that the one from whom you seek love will finally say, now you are worthy for me to feed you. Your people-pleasing? It's not innate kindness. It's the strategy of someone starving to death who is ready to eat any, even the most humiliating crumbs from someone else's table just to get a drop of the nutrients of approval. Your workaholism? It's not a passion for work. It's an exhausting attempt to earn enough money to buy food in the form of recognition and status, in the secret hope that this will finally bring satiety. Each of your successes, each word of praise, each thank you is a tiny, almost weightless morsel. It briefly relieves the sharpest attack of hunger, but doesn't satisfy, because the soul, like the body, cannot live on illusions. You're trying to feed hunger for love with a food made of approval, but these are different substances, and so the hunger doesn't go away. It only becomes duller and more demanding, forcing you to cook even more exquisite dishes, collect even smaller crumbs, and earn even more money for food that will never satisfy you. Because you're looking for the source of food in the wrong place. Perhaps the concept of emotional hunger sounds abstract. Let's make it absolutely concrete. Let's conduct a small but extremely important experiment right here and now. And now I'll ask you to do something that may seem unusual for a YouTube video. I want you to become an active researcher for a moment, not a passive viewer. Pause this video. I'm not joking. Do it. You don't owe me this. You owe it to yourself to feel, not just understand. Now that you are in silence, close your eyes if it's more comfortable, and honestly return to one specific moment. Recall a recent case when you received praise, recognition, or approval that you worked so hard for. Maybe it was a successfully completed project at work, a compliment from your partner about how you look, or a friend's gratitude for which you sacrificed your time and energy. Capture this memory. Now ask yourself the main question. What exactly did you feel the second you heard those words? Was it true, deep, quiet joy? A feeling of inner peace and warmth that filled you and stayed with you for several hours, maybe even days? A sense of, I'm okay, I am enough. Or was it something else? A short, almost feverish spike of relief? A fleeting thought. Thank God it worked. I pulled it off. They're pleased. Relief that was followed almost immediately within minutes or hours by a new quiet anxiety. Will I be able to maintain this bar? What do I need to do next to earn it again? Be brutally honest with yourself. If you felt the latter, this fleeting spike of relief tinged with anxiety, then you have just personally diagnosed yourself with chronic emotional hunger. This is the main symptom. It's the difference between real nourishment and a temporary easing of hunger symptoms. True joy is hearty, healthy food. Relief with anxiety is a spoonful of sugar on an empty stomach. It gives an instant burst of energy, followed inevitably by an even deeper crash and a desperate desire for the next dose. This feeling, this fleeting ghost of satisfaction followed by the shadow of anxiety, is the key. It's not just an emotion, it's an echo. An echo from the earliest and deepest layers of your psyche. And to understand which door this key opens, we must turn to one of the greatest explorers of the human soul. To a man who dared to descend into the darkest and most forgotten basements of our inner world to map them. His name is Carl Gustav Jung. Jung was not just a psychologist, he was an archaeologist of the soul. He taught that we carry within us not only our personal, biographical history, but the entire history of humanity, encoded as universal images and energies he called archetypes. And if Jung looked at your chronic emotional hunger, he would not see a personal failure or low self-esteem. He would see the action of one of the most powerful and fundamental forces in the human psyche. The archetype of the Great Mother, allow me to explain. Jung believed that in each of us, regardless of gender, there is an innate, instinctive need for the maternal. It's the need for unconditional acceptance, safety, nourishment, both physical and emotional. It's the archetype that promises us paradise. But our real experience with our real mother, or whoever played that role, fills this universal archetype with personal content. Thus is formed what Jung called the mother complex, our personal inner image of the mother, which becomes the filter through which we see the world and ourselves. And here at this point lies the source of your hunger. For you, this inner image of the mother, this sole source of nourishment, turned out to be dried up, or worse, poison. Instead of being a cornucopia granting unconditional love, it became a stingy distributor who gives out food only under certain conditions. It became a voice that says, not you are loved, but you will be loved if. And your whole life turned into a desperate, endless attempt to fulfill that if. So what is this powerful, primordial force? To understand it, we must step beyond conventional psychology and enter the realm of myth. Let's use a powerful metaphor. Imagine that at the very center of your soul, in the throne room of your psyche, there stands a throne. It's not just a piece of furniture. It's an energy center responsible for your basic sense of safety, worth, and belonging in the world. This throne cannot remain empty. It must be occupied. And two eternal, opposing forces, Two faces of the same archetype of the great mother vie for it. The first face is the good mother. This is the archetype of unconditional acceptance. She is the garden of paradise where you can be yourself without fear. She is the source of nurturing warmth that says, you are loved because you exist. Your existence is already sufficient grounds for my love. Her presence on the throne grants the soul the deepest peace, the sense of innate rightness, and the right to be in this world. It is the milk of life that nourishes forever. The second face is the terrible mother. This is the archetype of rejection and conditional love. She is an icy desert where you must keep moving constantly, not to freeze to death. She is a devouring maw that consumes her child's individuality, demanding complete conformity to her expectations. Her primary tool is cold. Her main weapon is shame. In an ideal world, in the soul of a child who receives enough warmth and acceptance, the good mother ascends to this inner throne. But if a child grows up in an atmosphere of emotional coldness, criticism, perfectionism, or rejection, then the negative dark pole of the archetype draws all the energy. It activates, fills with the power of real experience, and usurps authority. This is exactly what happened in your soul. Sitting on your inner throne is not the good mother, but the Ice Queen. And like any ruler, she establishes her own laws in her country, that is, in your soul. And her main inviolable law is carved into the back of her throne. It reads, I will love you if you are perfect, if you are convenient, if you never get angry, if you are useful to others, if your achievements are loud enough to drown out my inner cold, and your whole life, your whole good person syndrome, is not a personality trait. It's a political regime established in your soul by the Ice Queen. Your anxiety is the atmosphere of her realm. Your perfectionism is the desperate attempt to fulfill her impossible laws. Your people-pleasing is the behavior of a subject who fears falling out of favor and being exiled into the permafrost of rejection. And her whisper, you are not enough, becomes the background music of your life. To see how ruthlessly and imperceptibly this Ice Queen rules, let's look at one story. The story of a person we'll call James. James is a brilliant architect. His projects are published in glossy magazines. He receives prestigious awards. His clients are wealthy and respected people. From the outside, his life seems the embodiment of success. He creates beauty, order, and harmony. He builds ideal homes for people. But James himself lives in a state of quiet, inexplicable despair. To understand him, we need to return to his childhood. James's mother was not cruel or evil. She was demanding and emotionally reserved. She sincerely loved her son, but her language of love was the language of achievements. When little James brought home top grades, she smiled that rare, approving smile that was more precious to him than anything in the world. She said, well done. I knew you could do it. But when he came home upset after a fight with a friend, she said, don't fall apart. Men don't cry. Go do your homework. She taught him everything except one thing: how to be when you're not perfect. Her love was not a gift, but a reward. And in the soul of little James, the Ice Queen took the throne. Her law was simple: you will be loved if you are the best. And James became the best. He graduated top of his class, then university with honors. He chose a profession where one could create flawless, perfect structures. Every one of his drawings, every line, every house he built was an unconscious attempt to present his inner Ice Queen with indisputable proof of his worth. Each of his projects was, in essence, a letter to his mother, a letter she would never read. And there he stands at the opening of his new masterpiece, a magnificent minimalist villa on the ocean front. Guests around him sip champagne and admire his talent. The client shakes his hand and says, James, this is genius. You exceeded all expectations. And James feels that same familiar flash of relief. For a second, the Ice Queen's voice falls silent. But already on the drive home, her whisper returns. Not bad, but the next project must be even better. No relaxing. He arrives home to his loving wife, who says, I'm so proud of you. But he cannot believe it. He looks into her eyes and unconsciously seeks that very maternal, total look of acceptance he never received. He wants her to say not, "I'm proud of what you did," but "I love you for who you are." But he can't hear those words because the deafening whisper of the Ice Queen inside him is much louder. James is an architect who builds houses for everyone, but remains homeless in his own soul. He lives in the icy palace of his perfectionism, where his eternal judge sits on the throne, and he will never be able to do enough to melt her heart. James is not just a fictional character. He is an archetype. He is the part of you that still looks at the world through the eyes of that child who desperately seeks in his mother's eyes a reflection of his worth. A child who learned too early the cruel lesson: love must be earned. Perhaps you don't build buildings, but you build. Oh, how you build. Your magnificent buildings are your impeccable work done right on time, even if you had to stay up all night. Your perfect drawings are your meticulously thought-out replies, your ability to anticipate others' desires, your constant readiness to help even when you have no strength. Your prestigious award is your boss's praise, a friend's gratitude, a like on social media, a compliment about your appearance. You have become a master at building perfect facades behind which a hungry child hides. And now you understand why praise brings you no true joy, why each compliment leaves a bitter aftertaste. Because the moment someone says, "Good job," you don't hear it with your own ears. You hear it with the ears of that inner child, who immediately carries this praise to the court of his Ice Queen. And each time you present your trophy to her, she looks at it with her cold, appraising gaze and says the same phrase. "Not bad, but you could have done better." This is why you can't claim your successes. This is why you live with a constant imposter syndrome. Because for the Ice Queen, any of your successes is not a reason for love, but merely a temporary fulfillment of her conditions. It's not an A confirming your worth, but only an A- that spares you from punishment. This internal mechanism makes you constantly devalue what you've already done and immediately raise the bar. Yes, I finished this project, but the next one will be twice as hard. Yes, I helped this person, but now I must help everyone. Yes, I got this position, but to keep it, I must work 3 times harder. It's a ruthless, self-sustaining system. The Ice Queen sets the law. You follow it. She says it's not enough. You try even harder. And so on to infinity. It's the perfect prison because both the jailer and the prisoner are you. Seeing this inner pattern is the first and hardest step. The second, no less important step is to find its main actor on the stage of your current life. Because the Ice Queen rarely rules alone. She is brilliant at projecting her power onto external figures and institutions. And so now I want to ask you a second, even more concrete and perhaps more painful question. Again, I ask you to be brutally honest with yourself. Who or what in your life today plays the role of this Ice Queen? To whose throne do you bring your achievements as tribute? Whose approval do you seek with the same childlike desperation with which James sought it from his mother? Maybe it's your boss, whose stingy praise becomes your only measure of professional value, and you're ready to work yourself to the bone just to earn his fleeting "not bad." Maybe it's your partner, in whose eyes you constantly seek confirmation that you are good enough, attractive enough, interesting enough, and you panic at any conflict because it feels like a threat of exile from the realm of their love. Or maybe it's the faceless yet almighty figure of public opinion, and you build your life, choose your profession, your clothes, even your hobbies, constantly glancing back at this invisible court that decides whether you are living right. Or, and this is the most important question, maybe the Ice Queen has long since ceased to need external representatives. Maybe her voice has penetrated your soul so deeply that it has become your own. And now this role is played by your inner critic, a merciless judge who sits on the throne 247 and hands down guilty verdicts for the slightest mistake. You grew up, but the courtroom in your soul remained the same. This is a deeply personal question, and I'm not asking you to share details. But the power of awareness multiplies when we share it with others. When we see that our most secret shame is a common experience. So if this image resonated with you, if while listening, you suddenly clearly saw the face of your judge, be it external or internal, I invite you to do one simple thing. Just write 3 words in the comments under this video. I saw my judge. No names, no stories, just this quiet testimony. so that when you scroll through the comments, you'll see hundreds, maybe thousands of such testimonies, so that you and others will understand you are not alone in this courtroom. There is a whole community of us here, and this awareness is the beginning of our common path to liberation. Realizing this can be painful, seeing the face of your inner tyrant, understanding how many years you've lived under his rule, it's a heavy discovery. And the natural first reaction is anger, despair, and the desire to destroy this enemy immediately. But now I ask you to do something paradoxical. Stop. And instead of declaring war, let's look at this situation from a completely different, higher vantage point, from the point of view of your soul. So we have seen the enemy, we have named it the Ice Queen, we have understood its laws, and now we must make the most important semantic reversal in this journey. We must understand that it came not to destroy you, but to save you. This pain, this unquenchable emotional hunger, this exhausting rule of the Ice Queen, it is not your curse. It is your greatest gift. It is a compass built into your soul that throughout your life has unerringly pointed to the one spot in your psyche that desperately craves healing, growth, and transformation. Your wound is not a sign of a defect. Your wound is the place through which the light is trying to enter you. Ancient alchemists believed that a person's greatest task is to turn lead, the lower dark matter, into gold, a symbol of wholeness and spirit. Well, all your pain, all this experience of rejection and cold, is that very alchemical lead that your soul handed you at birth. It is not punishment, it's your personal assignment, your great work. And so the Ice Queen on your inner throne is not a life sentence. It is an invitation, it is a challenge. It is an invitation to your own coronation. Your soul sent you this tyrant not so that you would suffer forever, but so that, tired of suffering, you would finally find the strength to cultivate your own inner wise and kind ruler, the one who can overthrow the tyranny and establish in your inner kingdom the law of love and acceptance. This cold was needed only so that you would learn to generate your own warmth. But how does this coronation happen? How do you overthrow the tyrant and establish a new order? It begins not with a revolution in the outer world, but with a quiet yet decisive reform within. And here we come to the most important strategic choice on your path. For years, maybe decades, you instinctively sought a solution on the outside. You hoped that one day your real mother or father would understand, apologize, and give you the warmth you lacked. Or you believed that if you found the one perfect partner, their love would finally fill that gaping void. Or you thought that if you achieved enough success and recognition, the applause of the outer world would finally drown out the whisper of the Ice Queen. So the first and bravest step toward healing is to admit that path is a dead end. The path to freedom is not to make your real mother change. She gave you what she could, based on her own story and her own wounds. The path is not to turn your partner into your eternal mommy. That is a burden that will crush any relationship, even the healthiest. And certainly the path is not to gather enough external approval. That's like trying to fill a bottomless barrel. The true path lies in a completely different direction. It consists in dethroning the Ice Queen within and consciously, day by day, cultivating in her place the inner good mother. This is the great act of psychological separation Jung spoke of. It is the transition from the child position of please feed me to the adult position of I will learn to feed myself. For you, Anton, this is the process of individuation becoming a whole, self-sufficient person who is the source of their own warmth and their own worth. This requires tremendous courage. The courage to turn away from the external judges whose approval you craved. The courage to stop waiting for apologies you will never receive. The courage to face your inner world and say, no one but me will decide whether I am worthy of love. That power belongs to me from now on. You must stop being a supplicant at others' thrones and ascend your own. This may sound grandiose, overthrow the queen and cultivate in her place a new ruler. But this inner revolution begins not with one heroic deed, but with hundreds of small, daily, conscious acts of disobedience to the old regime and loyalty to the new one. It's work that requires patience and consistency. Allow me to offer you two initial, concrete practices on this path. These are not life hacks. These are rituals for cultivating your inner good mother. First practice, feeding the inner child. This is not about simply treating yourself to cake or buying something new. This is a practice of deep, conscious care based on intention. Several times a day, especially in moments of stress, fatigue, or self-criticism, stop for 30 seconds. Place your hand on your chest, close your eyes, and ask yourself one question. What does my most vulnerable part need right now? My inner child? And listen for the answer. Perhaps it will say, I'm tired, I need rest. Then you promise to go to bed earlier instead of staying up working. Perhaps it will say, I'm scared. Then you mentally embrace it and say, I'm with you, we'll handle this. Perhaps it needs silence, a walk in nature, or just a glass of water. The point is to give it that, without bargaining and without conditions. Not you'll rest if you finish the work, but you'll rest because you're tired and your state is a priority. Each time you do this, you commit an act of unconditional love for yourself. You feed yourself the very nourishment you so lacked. Second practice, the Good Mother Journal. This is an even more powerful practice. Take a notebook and split the page into 2 columns. One column is your I, your habitual voice of anxiety, fear, self-criticism. The second column is the voice of that ideal, wise, good mother whom you may never have had, but whose image as an archetype lives in the depths of every soul. And begin a dialogue. Write down your real painful thoughts, then answer them from the position of this inner wise figure. For example, I made a mistake at work. Now everyone will think I'm incompetent. Good mother, your mistake doesn't define you. It is only an experience. Your worth is unchanged. You have the right to be imperfect. I'm so tired, I have no strength. Good mother, of course you're tired. You take on so much. Rest. The world won't collapse if you take care of yourself. I give you permission to rest. Write down the very words you always desperately wanted to hear. Why does this work? It's not magic. It's neuroplasticity. The Ice Queen's voice is a wide, well-trodden highway in your brain. Each such exercise is like laying a new, quiet path through the forest. At first it's hard, but the more often you walk it, the wider and more noticeable it becomes, until one day it turns into a new healthy road. You are literally rewiring your brain, creating and strengthening a new inner image. The image of someone who loves you, unconditionally. These practices are not just techniques, they are acts of sacred return to yourself. They are a way to remember what you always knew but forgot, because now you must understand the most important, most liberating truth of our entire journey. You carry within you both the wound and the medicine. Yes, there is an icy throne in your soul and the memory of cold. This part of your story is real, and it must not be denied. But next to this throne, in the deepest part of your psyche, another image has always existed, the image of that very good mother. It is embedded in you by birthright as part of your human inheritance. Within you, there is not only the personal memory of lack, but also an innate, archetypal capacity for boundless warmth. It was merely asleep. It was waiting for you, tired of searching outside to finally turn your attention to it. All your life, you have been like a person dying of thirst while sitting on a well's lid. You search for water everywhere, in other people, in achievements, in approval. You hoped someone would come and give you a drink. And the main task of your healing is to realize that the spring you search for across the world flows right under your feet. Your task is not to find this warmth somewhere else, but to allow it to be born within you. Your task is not to earn love, but to become its source for yourself. This is the final act of growing up. This is the path to wholeness, to stop being an orphan looking for parents and become a parent to yourself. So remember, in those moments when you feel especially lonely, when the Ice Queen's voice sounds especially loud, when it seems that no one in this world can give you what you need, remember these words. You are the one you've been waiting for. We have traveled a long road in this hour. We descended into the cold basements of the soul, faced the inner tyrant, and found the courage to name it. We saw how a childhood wound shapes our entire adult life. And now at the exit of this labyrinth, we must take with us one single most important key. If we reduce our entire journey to one idea, it will sound like this. To stop earning love means to stop being the child who holds out a hand for it outside, and to become the adult who consciously and patiently creates it within. This is the liberation. It is the shift of your entire existential paradigm. It is the declaration of your personal inner independence. So let these words sink into you as deeply as possible. Let them become your new creed, your inner manifesto. Your worth is not defined by others' approval. It is not earned by perfect work. It is not proven by never saying no. It is not measured by the amount of praise. It is your inalienable birthright. Your worth is not a variable but a constant. You came into this world already whole, already worthy, already loved by the very fabric of being. Everything that followed was just layers of dust and dirt that stuck to this original diamond. And your work is not to create the diamond, but merely to cleanse it. So, inhale and hear this. You are enough right now, in this very second, with no ifs. And when this truth starts to grow within you, first like a timid sprout and then like a mighty tree, your life will begin to change. Not overnight, not by magic, but slowly, organically, from the inside out. Just imagine this life for a moment. Imagine waking up in the morning without the habitual burden of shoulds. Imagine your actions throughout the day arising not from a deep fear of rejection, but from genuine interest and curiosity, where work is not a way to prove your worth, but a field for self-expression. Imagine the word no ceasing to be synonymous with catastrophe. You say it calmly, firmly, and without destructive guilt, simply because it reflects your truth in this moment. Imagine intimacy with another person no longer being an exam you must ace. It becomes a free dance of two self-sufficient people, where you can be vulnerable without fear of judgment and imperfect without fear of abandonment. Imagine the silence in your soul ceasing to be a frightening emptiness that must be urgently filled with others' approval, and becoming a fertile space for your own thoughts, feelings, and creativity. Imagine a life where you can finally exhale deeply to the very bottom of your lungs. Take off that heavy, invisible armor of the good person, straighten your shoulders, and simply be. Not play a role, not conform to expectations. Just be yourself. This is the freedom your soul calls you to. This path will not be quick or easy, but today you took the first, most important step. You looked your shadow in the face, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. Thank you for walking this path to the end. Thank you for your time, your attention, your trust. It takes real courage not to turn away, not to close the video, but to stay and look into the coldest and most painful corners of your soul. This work is not for everyone. By doing this, you stop being just a viewer. You joined an invisible yet real community, a community of those who chose the difficult but infinitely noble path to wholeness, a community of seekers who understand that the most important discoveries are made not in the outer world, but in the inner one. Look at the comments under this video. You will see people just like you, the same brave explorers. You are no longer alone in your search. Welcome. We're glad you're here. And so that we can continue these important conversations, to keep exploring this inner landscape together, I invite you to become a regular participant in these expeditions. If this hour-long journey was valuable to you, if you felt that this is the language of your soul, then I invite you to subscribe and continue this path with us. This channel is not just a set of videos. We see it as a cartographic bureau for explorers of the inner world. Each video here is another fragment of the map, another tool for navigating the most important and most uncharted territories, the territories of your soul. We will talk about the shadow, the persona, the path to yourself, about all those great forces that shape your destiny. To make sure you don't miss our next deep conversation, our next step together, click the bell. That way you'll be sure the invitation to a new journey will find you. And in conclusion, I want to leave you with one thought. Let it be your guiding light on days when old habits and voices from the past pull you back into the familiar prison. Let it be your license for freedom. Remember, you did not come into this world to be convenient. You came to be yourself. Until we meet again in the depths.